All right, welcome back to the KWCH Origins podcast. We are here today with Wichita State Athletic Director Kevin Saal. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jeff. How are you doing?
We're doing well over here too. This is part two of this conversation. Part one will never see the light of day, so we don't need to necessarily worry about that. But we'll try to have another good conversation here. I wanted to start with some current day stuff, not necessarily current, but just about your time at Wichita State, because a lot of from the outside looking in, it kind of looked like you really hit the ground running. You made a lot of decisions. But what was the grace period like? How long did that last for you to kind of get your feet on the ground here, really figure out what this athletic and program and community was about?
Well, I think there's a healthy listen and learn period where you do have to understand the organization and the history and kind of where you are, establish and identify your current state, and then use some time to start to identify what the ideal state is based off of your current state. So there is a acclimation period there, but I would tell you in terms of a grace period, or some people call it a honeymoon. For me, it was minute one of accepting the job. You want to start improving. It sounds really simple, Jeff, but we personally, I'm just committed to planning and preparation, and then execution and evaluation, and planning and preparation. It just keeps going. And I think I learned that from some great coaches in my career. And we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Let's just not make the same ones twice, and let's learn from them and continue to get better every day.
Yeah, so let's go back to the beginning. We know that you were raised by a couple educators. So what did you have to do, or what did you have to do your homework before every night before you had to? I'm sure that was a thing in your house. Do your homework, or you can't do this. Was that a thing?
Yeah, homework was pretty important to my parents. I think it was probably less important to me around that sixth, seventh, eighth grade
I
period of
get it.
time. But yeah, no, mom and dad were both educators. Dad was a psychology professor and department head of psychology at K-State, and mom was an advisor in arts and sciences and had spent some time in the health industry as well. But both my parents were committed to development of young people and programs on a college campus. So I grew up on that college campus. We didn't do babysitters very often. Typically, I'd go down to Bluemont Hall and occupy dad's second office on the fourth floor and run around the hallways and bother professors. And occasionally, dad would actually have us in one of his classrooms. He was an industrial organizational psychologist, and he'd have us in a child psychology class as a panel discussion with students. I mean, I just grew up on a college campus.
Yeah, so we'll talk about it in a minute, your athletic career, but it took you to Arkansas and TCU. But as a kid, did you feel like K-State was going to be the place for you just because you had grown up around it, or did you feel like you needed to get away from that?
Well, that's an interesting question because, you know, for us, it was never about if college, it was when college, like we were going to go to college. And certainly understand that's not the case. And I think that's what makes my current job appealing is that we have 50% first generation college students who are doing things that have never been done before in their families. And so that's really rewarding to be a part of. But for me, it was you're going to college, and we were such a athletics family. Dad had season tickets to football and basketball, and we were around it so much. We played youth sports. I'm the youngest of three, two older sisters, traveling softball in the summers. I mean, we were everywhere. So there came an opportunity for me when I was in high school. I played soccer and then was a springboard diver on the swimming and diving team, and diving just worked. I think there was a little bit of talent there. The work ethic was there, and it gave me an opportunity to earn a scholarship at the University of Arkansas, and then I continued on at TCU when Arkansas dropped their men's program. So it was a great opportunity for me. The value of the education that I received, the scholarships, the all the elements of the scholarship, very appreciative of and for, because I, I would have been likely would have been forced into attending a college in the state of Kansas had I not had the athletics aid to be able to go to Arkansas and TCU.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about that too. Arkansas and TCU, those are obviously really big time programs. So how big time were they in swimming and diving, with diving, which is what you did, And how good were you? Because that's big time stuff, right?
Well, the answer to the second question will be very quick, but the first one I'll go into just a little bit. Yeah, I was very fortunate all throughout high school. Mom and dad sent me to camp at the University of Arkansas. So the summers after my freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, and I fell in love with the program and the campus and the coach that was there. We were really fortunate because as a freshman in high school, I met two freshmen at the University of Arkansas by the name of Tom and PJ, and we've been lifelong friends. But we kind of walked through high school to get. I was in high school, they were in college, and when I graduated and went to Arkansas, they were fifth year seniors. Each of them had a redshirt year. And so I was able to actually compete on the same team with those guys, which was a real highlight for me. But I learned so much, and I think it probably educates what we do today because there were days I wasn't very good, which is the answer to your question.
I don't think I believe you.
And man, I developed really well under that first coach at Arkansas, and it was hard. It was a challenge. And I can tell you many a days that if there was a transfer portal, I probably would have taken a pretty good look at it.
Wow.
But I think in those moments of challenge and struggle, that's where you learn to look inside yourself and really find a different self and a different level that you can go to. That's really important. And a lot of if we enter into a challenging situation, there's oftentimes I will think back to challenges that I had in college, and I can think, you know what, if we were able to do that, we can handle this piece here. So there's certainly some growth and development that comes out of it.
Yeah. So aside from that, obviously you ended up getting into the diving element of it. What you mentioned you played soccer, but what was kind of the role of sports in your childhood? Did you have a team that you rooted for? Did you go out in the backyard and throw the football around? What was kind of your sports background growing up?
Yeah, Dad and I loved to play football. I was always the wide receiver, and he was always the quarterback. And I was always diving into the cedar trees and the pine trees to make the catch and do all those things. But we had a lot of fun. My dad had a huge love of baseball. He grew up on Long Island, so it was Yankees all the way. But he would take us once or twice a year to a Royals game. Very occasionally, we would go to a Chiefs game. And this was back when the Chiefs were just not very good. The quarterback was Bill Kenny, and you had Stephon Page, and it was the Chiefs just weren't very good. But I do remember following obviously the Royals and George Brett in the early to mid '80s. I remember watching on a 13-inch Zenith screen TV the '85 World Series Game 6 against the Cardinals. You couldn't get a lot of Royals on TV back then, so I did fall in love with the Cubs and Harry Carey because you get home
Yeah.
and you'd get the 1:10 p.m. First pitch at Wrigley. So it was a dire childhood following baseball. After '85, following Royals and Cubs was pretty tough until 2000, 15 and 16, back-to-back years.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about 2016 because that's the year the Cubs beat my then Cleveland Indians, and just another heartbreak. I guess it was going to have to be one of us, right, to endure another heartbreak in a long string of them.
That's right. That's right.
So, what were your educational plans? Were you always, I know you got into sports psychology. That was kind of your plan at one point, but, undergrad, what were you kind of working toward? What did you feel like you would become when you got a little bit older?
Well, it was very clear to me that I was of average intellect in college because I was in an intro biology class at the University of Arkansas with about 300 people. And I recognized really quickly that the brain power in the room was much different than my brain power. So I switched my major from biology to psychology. My dad was a lifelong psychologist. So I said, hey, let's try it and figure it out. And I really enjoyed the learning aspect, learning about learning, how learning happens, behavior, just analysis, the growth, all those pieces, the leadership development. And so I stuck with that and got my undergrad in psychology. I did my master's at the University of Kansas, actually in sports administration, because we had moved to Lawrence Jennifer and I had just gotten married. She was pregnant with our firstborn son, Jacob, who was born in March of that first year. And I remember vividly sitting down with the academic advisor before enrolling for master's classes, and he said, "I've got some bad news for you. We dropped our sports psychology program." And I said, "Man, do you have anything in sports?" And they had a sports administration program, and I entered into that and got an unbelievably fortunate opportunity to actually work in intramural and rec sports during my master's work, and learned a lot of basics that at the time, I never thought they would be applicable in athletics, but they certainly were. And just works for some great people there. And as I finished up my master's, that last semester of my master's coursework, I actually had gotten a full-time job at K-State in their athletics department. So I was bouncing back and forth between Manhattan and Lawrence for that semester. But it was a great opportunity, great experience.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think about sports psychology, even though that's not the field that you got into. Obviously, kind of like sports psychologists have become a thing over maybe the last 10 or 15 years, and athletes certainly aren't, hesitant to talk about mental health. So, what do you think about that whole field, and how important do you think that is? Is that something that you can use at Wichita State? Is that something that you do use at Wichita State?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So we have a Shocker Health and Performance division within athletics that's comprised of our strength and conditioning. We call that sports performance, which is all the sports science piece. It's our weight room, our strength, our conditioning elements. So that's your first piece. We have the athletic training, sports medicine area as well. Have no idea why the balloons are going
I
up,
don't
but
know. They must know it's my birthday.
it is your birthday. Happy
That
birthday.
has to be it.
So you've got the athletic training piece, and then you have nutrition, and then the mental health side. And back when I was interested in sports psychology, it was much more focused on the performance side. So it was visualization. It was practicing a pathway towards success. It was internal dialogue. It was all those things that every athlete works their way through in some form or fashion to try and get to success, overcoming mental obstacles, those types of things. In recent years, it has transitioned very much towards the mental health side of things because it is a very different student athlete experience today than it was 25 years ago. So we are really blessed and fortunate. We have two full-time individuals in DJ Purnell and Mally Hall that work with Shocker Athletics that are in their titles are sports perform or excuse me, it's mental health and performance. So they are educated and experienced and practice both the mental health side and the sports performance side. Really, really fortunate for our student athletes. And when we got here, we had just established the one full-time position, and we've been able to actually add two. So we feel like we're in a really good spot to serve our student athletes.
Absolutely. So tell me about your time at Kansas State. Obviously, a pretty good time to be in the athletics department at Kansas State. A lot of good stuff going on there. I know you worked closely or relatively closely with Bill Snyder, got to observe him. So what was that experience like for you?
It was unbelievable, to be honest with you, because you're a kid that grows up in Manhattan, and I remember we grew up a mile from the football stadium, and the football product at that point in time in the early to mid '80s was atrocious. And I say that with all due respect, but there's Sports Illustrated articles about the Big Eight trying to figure out how to get Kansas State out of the Big Eight. And I remember a president, John Weefald, that really decided to invest in football, and they built the nicest football indoor facility in the country. And in 1988, I believe it was, um, hired Coach Snyder, who was, my understanding, was the 13th selection in
Wow.
that hiring process. And so you recount all the stories, and at the end of the day, that journey at Kansas State for me, I think defined what I wanted to do professionally because you had an organization that was not very successful. And then if you listen to Coach Snyder's first press conference, it's with all due respect, it's very underwhelming. Basically, he said, "I'm not going to make any promises. But I can commit to you that we're going to get better every single day." And for me, that has transitioned into this productivity cycle of plan and prepare, execute, evaluate, plan and prepare, and just be committed to that. And he was committed to that. He walked in with 16 components of his vision and coaching philosophy, was into the details. So you watch this thing transform, and then you really get fascinated with it because you're taking what was an unsuccessful organization with people in it, and it has now become a successful organization with the same people that were involved in an unsuccessful organization. That fascinated me. And so anyway, to have an opportunity to start my career working 5 years in athletics, and 4 of those 5 years we organized football teams travel. So we were very, very close with Coach Snyder, with Sean Snyder. His son was the associate AD for football operations. We managed football game days on the event management side as well. So I had a real blessing and opportunity to get to know Coach a little bit, and just a phenomenal individual.
So obviously you're tied to Kansas because you grew up here, attended some school here, quite a bit actually, and then you're also tied to the state of Kentucky, which we'll get into the specifics in a minute. But you were at Kentucky and then at Murray State. So what did the state of Kentucky end up meaning to you?
Well, it's interesting. After I finished up at Kansas State, I did just short of 2 years at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and that was a really great perspective gainer for us. We had an administrative staff of 13 people, and we all wore so many hats. Just great relationships there, and I had a desire after that experience to get back into the football side of college athletics, and so I applied for an entry-level position at the University of Kentucky. It was an event coordinator position. Got the job and arrived in February of 2007. Made a really interesting connection with the AD at Kentucky because we were both from the state of Kansas. And that relationship just grew over 12 years. And he took a keen interest in our family, in my development as a professional. I think he appreciated the work ethic and productivity, and the attention to detail. And it just really worked. And I remember in 2012, our basketball team had just finished up a run through the national championship. And I was able to see a lot of the global pieces of what it takes to be a director of athletics. And I remember calling Mitch and saying, "Hey, I'm not 100% there yet, but I think I want to explore what it might look like to be an AD at some point." And he put me on a developmental pathway. He thrust me into developmental opportunities, whether it was fundraising. We did $250 million in capital construction over the course of 10 or 12 years there. And I had an opportunity to be a part of a lot of that. I oversaw 2 sports in men's soccer and baseball, so I got that experience as well. And then I got the first opportunity to be an AD in March of 2019, and Mitch was integral in that. So to have him there that day, that first press conference in Murray, Kentucky was really, really special. My college coach from the University of Arkansas was also there that day. That was really special as well. And I think that illustrates the power of athletics and coaching and relationships with student athletes. And so I spent a little over 3.5 years at Murray State, and had an unbelievable opportunity to work with a great basketball coach in Matt McMahon, who's now at LSU. Came in on the back end of John Morant's time at Murray State, and was able to bring some of the tools and resources that we had at Kentucky for exposing and highlighting individual players and basketball teams and working with coaches. It was a great experience at Murray State. We hired a football coach. We transitioned the program into the Missouri Valley Conference and the Missouri Valley Football Conference. We spent our last year doing that. And that really created a competitive pathway that will last a very long time for that program. So a lot of good close friends, and family there, and still watch the Racers and wish them the best
Yeah.
as we go forward. But it was a great opportunity to come back home and be at Wichita State.
What was it like? Because you did move up so much at Kentucky and got a lot of opportunities that you were basically on the doorstep of becoming an athletic director, and then you became one. Was there anything about it that you didn't expect? How big of an adjustment was it, if at all? And how did you kind of adapt to that?
I think the biggest adjustment for me was the peer group change. So when you're at the University of Kentucky and you go from an event coordinator to an assistant AD for event management, associate AD, senior associate, executive associate, and all of a sudden you're on a senior staff of maybe 20. The staff was about 350 coaches, administrators at Kentucky. you're on a senior staff of maybe 20, and you're on an executive staff of 6 or 8 individuals that are really charting the course and supporting Mitch directly in moving the program forward. So that peer group, it was a phenomenal peer group. It was competitive in a healthy and respectful way. We were competitive and always trying to outperform expectations and set each other up for success and do all those things. That was awesome. And then when you become an AD, your peer group changes dramatically. Your peers change from the lead marketing contact in athletics or compliance or ticket office or the director of football operations, whatever it is. They change from that to the vice president for student affairs, the vice president for finance and administration, the provost, marketing and promotions on campus, and they all have significant responsibilities that under them, and they're not as dialed into the athletics piece. So that to me, I think, was the biggest adjustment. You certainly understand as a director of athletics that there are decisions that will sift down through the funnel and get to your plate, and ultimately you're going to need to make a decision. And typically those are the tough ones. The easy decisions, they get handled at the layers that they should get handled, and
Yeah.
then so there's an adjustment there as well. But it's been a great learning curve, and I think we're coming up on 5 years as a director of athletics, and I've
Yeah.
enjoyed it very much.
That's pretty impressive because you're still relatively young. So what brought you, what drew you to Wichita State, and why were you interested in that opportunity? I'm sure being back in Kansas had a lot to do with it.
It did, and I will tell you that I had a unique connection to Wichita State through, at the time, was my oldest sister's boyfriend, and they end up having they were married for 26 years, and he was from Wichita. He went to Wichita Heights, and
Okay.
I was the youngest of three, two older sisters, so I didn't have an older brother, and he was basically that older brother at the time. And he brainwashed me into Wichita State athletics, specifically baseball, because he caught for Darren Dreifert in
Wow.
high school at Wichita Heights. And he had a unique story. He tried out for the Shocker baseball program. I think it was the fall of '89 after they had won the national championship. He actually tore his ACL, so his baseball career was done. He transferred to K-State and he met my sister. So that was the first connection. I was intrigued by it, and then obviously career in athletics. I've watched the Shockers. Obviously, we've crossed paths on the basketball floor, the volleyball floor, at track meets, and certainly I have watched with a keen eye. When the opportunity came open, I started to do a little research, and to be honest with you, I hadn't been on campus since 2004, which was towards the end of my time at K-State. We played a baseball game in Eck. And I started to learn about the applied learning program and the innovation campus, and 6,000 students involved in applied learning that are earning a combined total of $28 million. It's really transforming the financial components of college, where these students are not only they're coming and they're starting their academic coursework, but immediately they can get into these applied learning experiences on the innovation campus, get paid to do so, leave with less debt, and they've entered a talent pipeline that's likely connecting them to jobs afterwards. That really resonated to me. We've got 50% first generation college students, so it's almost a one-stop shop if you will apply yourself as a student to entering into a very competitive career and workforce. Then you start to read about the grants that John Tomlin and industry and defense programs and NIAR are involved in. The connection with WSU Tech and innovative things like Niche, the culinary hospitality school. It was something that was really intriguing to me. And then I met President Muma and understood his vision about access and affordability, workforce development, business development. You start to read about the biomedical center downtown. And Jeff, we haven't even gotten into athletics. That's just everything that really intrigued me on the campus
Yeah.
side. And then President Muma's got a great vision for our athletics program that aligns with mine. We have an opportunity to do some really nice things from a facility standpoint. And Wichita State Athletics is a program that has seen success in nearly every one of its programs, whether it's NCAA success, league championships, but it has yet been able to put it all together. And in my mind, putting it all together is a commitment to our core values, to creating a student athlete experience that our student athletes don't want to leave, and then competitive excellence that puts us in the top, 75 to 100 in the country from a Directors Cup standpoint.
Very good. So I wanted to ask you before I let you go, because as we record this, the Shocker men's basketball team has a big game in Kansas City tonight against Kansas State. But as an athletic director, what do you feel like is in your control about the job? Because a lot of it is related to what coaches you hire, whether those programs win, whether students get good grades, whether people are willing to help you out financially. So what do you feel like you're in control of when you talk about being an athletic director?
Putting good people in place. I think that's probably the most critical piece. I can recall a conversation with Mitch where, when they started at the University of Kentucky prior to my arrival, the budget would be $40 million, and not all coaching positions were funded. Not all scholarship amounts were funded. This is back in 2002 at the University of Kentucky. And I asked Mitch, the facilities portfolio was just not good. And I asked Mitch, I said, where did you start? There was so much to get done. Where did you start? Where did you prioritize? He said, Kevin, you have to start with people. You have to get the right people in place first, because you can live and work in the Taj Mahal and you can recruit great student athletes. But if you can't develop them and lead them with great people, if you don't have people in a position that you can trust every single day to carry out your vision and values and what you're trying to get accomplished, then you're ineffective as a leader in an organization. So I think it starts with people. We had Jeff, we had a year kind of a kickoff meeting with President Muma, and we go through compliance items for our staff, and it's kind of a launch meeting in August. We've got about 100 coaches and staff in our athletics program, and we passed the mic and we asked folks to introduce themselves if they were new to the department. We had about 40 new folks in the department. So between the changes in our basketball and baseball programs, you obviously have some natural churn. We've got 16 GAs that work within our athletics program, so there's some churn there as well. And then we were able to add some critical positions. So that certainly, I think, is the most important place to start, is your people.
Very good. Well, you've been very generous with your time, not only today, but the first time we tried this. You're doing this from Kansas City, where the Shockers, as I mentioned, play tonight against Kansas State in Kansas City. So thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know a lot of people will enjoy hearing you talk about what led you to Wichita State, and I know a lot of people are happy with the job you're doing so far.
I appreciate that very much. We got an unbelievable team that's all pulling the rope in the same direction. It's never one person. So look forward to that, and appreciate the opportunity to be on this show, and then your show every couple of weeks with you and your dad as well. So happy holidays to you and your family.
Thank you. Happy holidays to you and yours as well. I appreciate it.
All right, go Shockers.
Thanks.